When someone disrespects you, your instinct is to react, to speak up, to set the record straight. But what if you didn't? What if your response wasn't a raised voice, but silence? Not out of fear, not out of surrender, but out of strength. Self-possession. Knowing exactly who you are and not needing to explain it to anyone. Silence isn't weakness. It's a message, a posture, a form of resistance that speaks louder than retaliation. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Stay with me to the end. You learn how to stay silent and still make the whole world listen. 1. The pain of disrespect and the Stoic response. Become the man who doesn't flinch. There's a kind of pain that doesn't bleed. It doesn't bruise. It doesn't scream. But it cuts you in a place deeper than skin. In your pride. In your identity. Disrespect. That subtle, cold dagger thrown casually in conversation. That mocking glance. The tone that says, "You're less." The silence that speaks louder than words. Every man knows it. You felt it. And in that split second, it lights a fire. You want to clap back. You want to prove you're not the one to play with. That primal instinct screams, react. Now. But here's the truth. You don't become powerful by reacting to disrespect. You become powerful by mastering the one response that most men are too weak to give. Silence. Not the silence of defeat. Not the silence of cowardice. But the silence of a man who knows he doesn't owe anyone a reaction. The silence of a man who understands this world is full of noise. And real power whispers. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about training your mind to rise above every emotional trap. It's about choosing not to get dragged into petty wars because you know you're fighting battles that matter. Reacting to every jab? That's for boys. Remaining calm, composed, and focused on your path? That's what men do. And here's what separates the average man from the man who commands respect without asking for it. Discipline over impulse. Stillness over chaos. Inner mastery over external validation. When you stay quiet in the face of disrespect, it's not that you didn't hear them. It's not that you didn't feel the hit. It's that you're too focused on something far greater. Becoming undeniable. The kind of man who walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere. Not because he's loud, but because his presence speaks volumes. A man so grounded, even storms bow in his presence. So ask yourself right now. Do you want to be a man who constantly proves, or a man who simply is? Because the man who constantly needs to prove he's strong never truly is. But the man who lets his results do the talking? He owns the room without ever raising his voice. So next time disrespect finds you, pause. Breathe. Feel the fire, but don't let it escape as words. Let it fuel the legacy you're building. Let it drive the discipline, the focus, the silence that screams power. And when they look for a reaction, give them your absence. Give them your success. Let them choke on their own doubt. That's boss mentality. That's Stoic dominance. Direct hit, stay quiet. Let success answer. Backhand index pointing right. If this hits deep, it's because you're ready. Ready to become more than a man who reacts. Ready to become the man they remember. Fire comment silence is power if you feel this in your bones. Rock it and follow for more Stoic fire daily. 2. Disrespect is a mirror, not a measure. You've already seen what silence can do. It holds weight. It disarms. It protects your energy and preserves your dignity. But what if I told you that most disrespect you face was never even about you? Let that sink in for a second. Most people who lash out, who criticize, who belittle, who try to get under your skin, they're not doing it because they see something wrong in you. They're doing it because they're at war with something inside themselves. Their words? They're not weapons, they're confessions. Every insult, every sarcastic jab, every passive-aggressive comment, it's a reflection of how little peace they have inside. It's them saying, I don't know how to deal with my own mess, so I'll try to make you feel small, too. When you truly understand that, everything changes. You stop taking it personally. You stop letting it penetrate. You stop wasting time wondering what you did wrong, and you start realizing what they're trying to hide. Disrespect is often just a mirror of brokenness, insecurity looking for validation, pain begging to be seen, fear disguised as bravado. And when you react to it, you give it power. You tell them, yes, you got to me. But when you remain composed, you hold up a mirror they're not ready to face. You force them to confront the truth that they were never in control. Think about this. When someone yells and insults you and you don't flinch, what happens? They stumble. They look confused. Because they were counting on your reaction to make themselves feel stronger. But your silence is deafening. It forces them to sit with their own instability. They wanted to throw chaos at you, and you gave them calm. There's no greater checkmate than that. This is not about being emotionless. This is about understanding the game that's being played and choosing not to play it. It's not your job to carry someone else's anger. It's not your responsibility to respond to every low blow with equal heat. Let them speak from pain. You speak with purpose. Or not at all. Because when a man is rooted in who he is, the chaos around him becomes background noise. And the only voice that matters is the one he uses to build, not to burn. So the next time someone disrespects you, stop. Don't defend. Don't justify. Don't return fire. Instead, remind yourself, this isn't about me. This is their pain talking. Their insecurity flaring. Their mask slipping. And in that moment, when you choose silence over reaction, you take back all the power. You become the mirror they weren't ready to face. And the mountain they can't move. You don't just protect your energy, you elevate it. Because real strength isn't loud. It's still. It's intentional. And it never stoops. You walked away from CTA 1 understanding the power of silence. Now, walk into this truth. Disrespect says more about them than it ever will about you. Let it reflect. Don't absorb it. Don't carry it. Don't give it a seat at your table. Because men who know who they are don't flinch when the world forgets it. Would you like me to proceed with CTA 3 or adapt this one into a performance-ready voiceover script with pauses and cadence cues for narration? 3. Not every battle deserves your sword. Now that you understand the truth that most disrespect is a mirror, not a measure, you're standing at the edge of a deeper realization. Because even if you've mastered the silence, even if you've seen through the projection of others, there's still the temptation. The temptation to respond. To correct. To make them see. To prove a point. To fight every battle as if it's the one that defines you. But here's the question every man must ask himself. Is this battle worth the cost? Not every insult is an invitation. Not every disagreement is a duel. Not every conflict deserves your attention, let alone your emotion. There's a cost to every fight. And it's not always visible. It's not just about time. It's about mental bandwidth, emotional energy, presence, focus. Every time you choose to swing your sword, you put down something else. Sometimes you lay down your peace. Sometimes your dignity. Sometimes the mission you were on before they tried to pull you off track. You have to ask yourself, what's the price of this fight? And what's the reward? Because there are men out there who live for the reaction. They bait. They prod. They provoke. They don't want to understand you. They want to drag you into their storm. And the moment you step in, you've already lost. Not because you weren't strong enough to win, but because you left your throne to chase a shadow. There's a kind of strength that doesn't swing first or second. There's a kind of power that comes from restraint, from choosing the higher road. Not because you can't fight, but because you know the fight isn't worthy of you. This is not weakness. This is elite-level self-governance. It's what separates a man who reacts to everything from a man who responds to only what matters. The one who reacts is constantly triggered. The one who chooses is constantly grounded. You don't get stronger by being in more battles. You get stronger by knowing which battles are truly yours. And most of them aren't. Here's the truth. Some things are better left unsaid. Some people are better left unanswered. Some provocations are better left unmet, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused on what actually matters. You're not here to win petty wars. You're here to build a kingdom. To lead. To master. To last. So the next time someone tests your patience, your pride, your path, ask yourself, is this battle going to move me forward or pull me backward? Will winning here cost me peace elsewhere? Does this moment deserve me? And if the answer is no, walk away. Not with bitterness. Not with ego. But with that steady, unshakable silence of a man who knows his mission and refuses to be distracted by noise. Because when you learn to reserve your fire, you become someone no one can manipulate. You become a fortress. You become untouchable. You've already learned that disrespect is often a projection. Now you know that engaging it doesn't always serve your higher purpose. Not every opponent is worthy. Not every challenge is real. Not every battle is worth your sword. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them think they got away with it. And then go in where it actually matters. Would you like me to continue with CTA 4 in this exact same tone and structure? Or would you like an adapted version of this for video narration with delivery pacing and breath cues? 4. Disrespect reveals them. Your reaction reveals you. By now, you've learned to hold your fire. You've realized not every conflict deserves your attention. You've seen that silence can be power, and that walking away is sometimes the most strategic move you can make. But now the road turns inward. Because every moment of disrespect, every verbal jab, every attempt to pull you down, it doesn't just expose them. It exposes you. In that split second, in that moment between insult and reaction, you are given a choice. Who do you want to be right now? Not who you've been. Not who you think you need to be to earn approval. But who you truly are and who you are becoming. Because these moments, these pressure points, they're more than just emotional tests. They're identity defining. This is when the world asks, what are you made of? Not out loud. Not directly. But in whispers, through discomfort, through insult, through provocation. The people who try to belittle you, they are revealing their character. They are saying, this is how I deal with frustration. This is how I handle my own insecurity. But your reaction, that's what reveals your character. Do you shrink to their level? Do you lash out just to feel heard? Do you become what you claim to stand against? Or do you pause? Do you choose to stay aligned with your values, even when it's uncomfortable? Even when no one else would blame you for firing back? This is what separates boys from men. This is what builds legacy instead of noise. Because anyone can flex in the calm. But who are you when you're tested? In the fire, you either melt or you forge. Disrespect is not just a wound. It's an opportunity. It's a mirror that says, here. Right now. Choose who you are. Choose how you respond. Choose what defines you. And make no mistake, you are always choosing. You don't rise to your expectations. You fall to your habits. Which means your reaction is not random. It's a reflection of your discipline, your code, your preparation. So the question becomes, are you someone who reacts? Or someone who responds? Are you someone who takes offense? Or someone who takes ownership? You are not here to prove yourself to people who don't see you. You're here to honor the man you know you are, whether they see it or not. Every disrespectful word thrown your way is not a demand for reaction, it's a doorway. You can walk through it unchanged. Or you can walk through it and evolve. Your ego will scream. But your wisdom will whisper. One wants validation. The other wants mastery. Listen closely. Choose wisely. Because when the dust settles and your name is mentioned, it won't be what you said in anger that they remember. It'll be how composed you stayed. How grounded you were. How you carried yourself when the room tried to pull you out of your character. You already know not every battle deserves your sword. Now it's time to remember, every reaction is a declaration of who you are. You are not what they say. You are what you choose to do next. 5. Silence is not weakness. It's emotional mastery. So now you know. Disrespect is the mirror. Your reaction is the reflection. And every moment of tension is really a moment of choice. But there's another layer you haven't fully stepped into yet. It's not just about choosing silence. It's about learning to control the storm that lives inside of you. Because here's the truth, and you won't hear this often in today's world. Mastery begins where emotional reflex ends. We live in a culture that celebrates loudness. Where the quickest to anger is mistaken for strength. Where reacting fast, pushing back hard, and speaking up first are worn like armor. But real men, the grounded ones, the powerful ones, the rare ones, they know something else. They know that the loudest man in the room is often the weakest. And the man who stays calm in chaos is the one everyone ends up watching. This is emotional mastery. Not because you don't feel anger. You do. Not because you don't want to strike back. You want to. But because you've built something inside that's stronger than the urge. You've trained yourself to pause. To assess. To wait. You've sharpened that rare ability to stand in the fire, without letting the fire shape you. Stoicism doesn't ask you to numb yourself. It doesn't teach you to pretend that things don't hurt. It asks something harder. To feel it, face it, and still choose calm. That's not suppression. That's strength. That's a man who doesn't run from emotion, but leads it. And when you reach that place, when you can hear the insult, feel the heat rise in your chest, and still decide to stay composed, you have reached a level of control most men will never touch. That's the power that builds empires. That's the power that leads others without needing to shout. That's the power that can walk away from provocation and never carry the residue with it. Because here's the truth you won't learn in a fight. You don't always win by attacking. Sometimes, you win by not needing to attack at all. Sometimes, the most powerful message you send is the one you don't say out loud. It's the unshaken eye contact. The calm breathing. The steady posture. The refusal to react, even when everyone else would. That silence? That's not weakness. That's a man who has been tested and trained himself not to flinch. You don't build that by accident. You build that in silence. In reflection. In the moments no one sees. You build it every time you choose stillness over escalation. Every time you walk away with peace instead of staying to prove something you no longer need to prove. You've already seen that your reaction defines who you are. Now let this truth settle in. Your ability to stay emotionally grounded in the face of chaos, that is your power. It's not how loud you are. It's how deeply rooted you become. Would you like me to continue with CTA 6, continuing this rhythm and depth? Or shall I format this one for vocal performance or cinematic narration with pacing cues? 6. The price of reaction is your peace. You've come this far. You've felt the pull to react and resisted it. You've watched yourself walk away from moments you used to fight. You've learned to sit in the tension without letting it command you. That's power. But now comes the deeper lesson. Because at the heart of this journey, beyond the silence, beyond the restraint, there's something else most men never find. Freedom. Not the kind others give you. Not the kind written in laws or tied to status. But the kind that only comes when you stop being owned by your own emotions. That's what this is really about. You've been trained your whole life to believe that real power comes from control over outcomes, over people, over perception. But that's an illusion. Control over others is temporary. Fragile. What lasts, what matters, is control over yourself. Because when you have that, no one can bait you. No one can rob you of your clarity. No one can pull you into a battle you never agreed to fight. Every time you react, you're trading something. Trading your peace for validation. Trading your focus for distraction. Trading your inner world for someone else's dysfunction. And sometimes it feels justified. Sometimes they cross a line. Sometimes it burns. But that's the test, isn't it? Not whether you feel it, but whether you let it take the wheel. There's a kind of man who wakes up every day ready to fight the world. But the man who wins long term is the one who doesn't need to. He doesn't chase. He doesn't defend every opinion. He doesn't respond to every bark. He knows that peace isn't something handed to him. It's something he guards. Ruthlessly. Because he understands one thing above all. The price of constant reaction is your peace. And peace, for a man building something meaningful, a life, a mission, a legacy, is non-negotiable. That's what the Stoics knew. That to let someone else dictate your mood, your response, your energy, is to give away the throne you were born to sit on. So when someone tries to stir you up, think about what it costs. When someone throws words like darts, trying to provoke a war, think about what you'll have to give up to join them. It may feel good in the moment to answer back. But if it leaves you spinning hours later, you didn't win. You paid. With time. With energy. With peace. And real power? It isn't in winning a fight. It's in not needing to fight at all. It's walking away with your mind intact. Your mission unshaken. Your inner world untouched. You've already seen what silence can do. You've already learned that calm is a decision, not a gift. Now understand this. The man who protects his peace is the man who owns his life. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves your attention. And nothing is worth trading your internal freedom for a moment of emotional reaction. 7. The wisdom to walk away. By now, you know what peace costs. And you've realized just how often people will try to steal it, not because they hate you, but because they don't know how to find it in themselves. You've learned to pause. You've learned to breathe. You've learned to withhold your reaction, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you're no longer wasting words where they won't matter. But there's one final move that many men hesitate to make. The walk away. Not just the silence. Not just the steady stare or the calm breath in the middle of the storm. But the decision to leave the storm behind completely. Because sometimes, the most powerful choice a man can make isn't to stay calm, it's to remove himself entirely from what no longer serves him. It's easy to get stuck in the mindset that you must stay and prove something. That if you walk away, you've let someone win. That staying in the room, in the relationship, in the argument, is strength. But strength without direction is just chaos in disguise. Staying in toxic spaces to prove you're tough is not power. Walking away from them without losing your center, that's power most men never taste. Stoicism doesn't just teach endurance. It teaches discernment. You don't earn wisdom by gritting your teeth through every conflict. You earn it by knowing which battles to walk past. Which energy to starve. Which environments no longer match the man you're becoming. Let them say what they want. Let them call it avoidance. Let them misinterpret your silence as surrender. They don't know what it took for you to stay composed in the fire. They don't know how much strength it took to walk instead of react. And they never will. Because true discipline doesn't ask for applause. It just keeps moving. The ability to detach, not in anger, but in clarity, is the ultimate flex. You are no longer controlled by the need to be understood. You are no longer owned by the urge to defend your position. You are no longer tricked into believing that staying in chaos proves you're strong enough to survive it. You've already survived. Now it's time to lead. And that means knowing when to stop explaining, when to stop responding, when to stop standing in the same arena expecting a different fight. Because the truth is, you don't rise by fighting small wars. You rise by outgrowing them. So the next time you feel pulled into a conversation that doesn't match your energy, a relationship that constantly drains instead of strengthens you, a moment that tempts you to prove something you've already proven, ask yourself, why am I still here? And then remember this. A man who knows who he is doesn't need to stay where he's no longer growing. Walking away is not retreat. It's strategy. It's elevation. It's the art of refusing to participate in battles beneath your character. You've already learned to guard your peace. Now take the next step. Learn when to walk and never look back. 8. Live on purpose, not on impulse. So you've walked away. You've learned to recognize the energy not worth your time, the people not worth your peace, the battles not worth your fire. That silence? That step back? That clean break? It wasn't just the absence of conflict, it was the beginning of something greater. Now comes the real test. What will you do with the power you just reclaimed? Because freedom from noise is only the first step. The next is filling that silence with intention. Choosing not just who you're not going to be, but who you are and how you will now move through the world. And this is where most men get lost. They cut out the chaos, but leave a vacuum. They master silence, but never step into voice. They detach from the wrong things, but never define the right ones. But you, if you made it this far, you're not here to float. You're here to anchor. To wake up with direction. To stop reacting and start designing. Because that's what Stoicism is really about. It's not just about resisting the pull of anger. It's about aligning every move, every word, every breath with purpose. Impulse is easy. It's reactive. It's driven by ego. But purpose? Purpose is heavy. It's deliberate. It's disciplined. And only men willing to carry that weight become something unshakable. So now, you must ask yourself, what am I building with my calm? What am I choosing with my silence? What am I aligning with every time I say no to chaos? Because choosing not to respond is only powerful if you know what you're saying yes to instead. You don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. But you do need to prove something to yourself. That you're not just avoiding the storm, you're becoming the mountain that rises above it. This is what separates the passive from the purposeful. The passive man avoids drama but drifts aimlessly. The purposeful man avoids drama because he has work to do. And that work, the inner work, the mission, the code, becomes his compass. He doesn't just stay calm. He moves calm. He doesn't just hold back. He aims forward. He wakes up not wondering what the world will throw at him, but with clarity about what he will give to the world. He doesn't just protect his energy. He invests it. That is the man who becomes untouchable. Not because he's disconnected, but because he's connected to something deeper than ego, deeper than impulse, deeper than opinion. He lives from the inside out. So now, the next time life tries to pull you into a reaction, the next time disrespect knocks, the next time your ego whispers, say something, prove something, do something, remember this. You don't need to move to defend who you are. You move to express who you've already chosen to become. Let the world spin. Let them talk. Let the noise rise and fall. You stay on purpose. Because a man who lives with purpose will always outlast a man who lives on impulse. 9. Silence as a boundary. Silence is self-respect. By now, you've stopped reacting. You've walked away from what no longer deserves your energy. You've stepped into purpose, and you've begun choosing your direction over distraction. But with this new clarity, a new challenge emerges. Because once you begin to live with intention, people will notice. And not everyone will understand. Some will try to pull you back. Some will mistake your silence for weakness, your boundaries for arrogance, your calm for indifference. They'll say you've changed, and you have. Because you're no longer available for games. No longer subscribing to approval. No longer performing for recognition. And here's the truth that most will never grasp. Silence is not a void. It's a line. A boundary. A wall built from self-respect. You are not required to respond to every opinion. You are not obligated to explain your piece to those committed to misunderstanding it. You are not responsible for carrying the emotional baggage of people who haven't done the work. There's a power in quiet refusal, in not arguing your value, not correcting every misperception, not proving yourself where proof was never the issue. Because you've come to understand something sacred. Your silence communicates everything. It says, I'm not here to be reshaped by your chaos. It says, you don't get access to my energy just because you want a reaction. It says, I respect myself too much to be moved by noise. This is the silence of boundaries. Not empty space. Not avoidance. But a decision. A stance. A protection of inner ground. And that silence? That stillness? It doesn't make you passive. It makes you untouchable. You're not avoiding confrontation. You've simply realized that most confrontations are invitations to self-betrayal. And you're done betraying yourself for the sake of being understood by people who are more interested in triggering you than knowing you. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not distant. You're focused. You're not disconnected. You're finally connected to the only voice that matters, your own. And that voice is loudest in silence. So when someone throws a snide remark, when they question your quiet, when they push just to get a rise out of you, let them wonder. Let your silence speak. Let it draw the line between what you used to allow and what you'll never allow again. This is not pride. This is self-respect. And self-respect doesn't raise its voice to be heard. It doesn't defend itself against every accusation. It doesn't explain itself in rooms too loud to listen. It doesn't lower itself just to meet someone else's comfort. It simply stands, silent and strong, like a mountain unmoved by the wind. You've already learned that peace must be protected. Now you must understand, your silence is one of its greatest weapons. You don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe anyone your reaction. And most of all, you don't owe anyone your identity. Silence is not absence. It's presence. It's power. It's your line in the sand. Would you like me to complete this sequence with CTA 10, the final and culminating piece, where we bring this journey of inner strength, silence, and stoic resilience to a close with a call to deep integration and personal evolution? 10. Find yourself in the silence. You've drawn your lines. You've held your peace. You've stayed grounded when the world expected you to break. And your silence, once mistaken as a void, has become your shield, your compass, your statement of strength. But now, there's something else waiting in that silence. Something no one else can give you. No noise can teach you. No battle can force you to earn. In this space you fought so hard to create, between impulse and intention, between reaction and restraint, there's something left to confront. Yourself. Because when the voice is quiet, when the chaos fades, when you no longer spend your days defending, proving, posturing, you're left with the only thing that truly matters. Who you are when no one else is watching. Most men avoid this moment their entire lives. They chase distractions, arguments, applause, anything that keeps them from sitting still long enough to face the man inside. But you've walked the hard path. You've stripped away what isn't you. You've stepped out of the noise and into the space where real growth begins. And here, in this place of solitude, you finally meet the unfiltered version of yourself. Not the performer. Not the pleaser. Not the competitor. Just a man. You meet his fears. His hopes. His past. His power. And you ask the question that resets everything. What truly matters now? This is where identity isn't built from reaction, but from reflection. This is where power isn't volume, but stillness. Where direction isn't loud ambition, but quiet certainty. You've stopped giving away your energy. You've stopped engaging in what drains you. You've stopped trying to be seen and started seeing yourself. And now you get to choose. What kind of man do you want to become from this point forward? Because silence is more than a weapon. It's a canvas. And now that all the noise has been cleared, you get to paint something true. Not what the world expects. Not what others demand. But what you know, deep in your chest, that you were born to build. No one can define that for you. Not your critics. Not your past. Not the expectations placed on your shoulders before you ever had a chance to speak. Only you. In the silence. Fully present. Fully aware. Fully capable. Because all your strength, all your wisdom, all your direction begins here. Not with a roar, but with stillness. The kind of stillness that rebuilds the man from the inside out. You've already learned to protect your peace. To reject the noise. To speak only when it serves truth, not ego. Now comes the final step. Let the silence rebuild you. Let it show you who you are. Let it shape the man you were always meant to become. Because greatness isn't found in how loudly you live. It's found in how deeply you know yourself when the noise is gone and only your soul remains. Final reflection, let silence be your signature. You've walked through the fire, not the kind that scorches skin, but the one that tests identity. You've stood at the crossroads between ego and elevation. You've tasted restraint. Felt the sting of disrespect. Watched the world try to drag you into battles that no longer deserve your presence. And you didn't fold. You chose the harder road, the road of composure. You chose silence, not as escape, but as declaration. You discovered that silence isn't empty, it's full of truth. That walking away isn't quitting, it's knowing your worth. That emotional control isn't numbness, it's power in its purest form. Each choice you've made, to hold back, to rise above, to redirect your energy, has led you here. To a place most men never reach. A place where the noise of the world no longer defines you. Where your peace is not dependent on their understanding. Where your identity is not up for debate. You have become still. And in that stillness, unshakable. You've learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply doesn't flinch. Sometimes, it's the pause before the storm. Sometimes, it's the man who says nothing and lets his life speak instead. Let that be your legacy. Not how loudly you answered, but how clearly you lived. Not how often you reacted, but how precisely you chose. Not how many arguments you won, but how many you no longer needed. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a life designed with intention, shaped by discipline, and carried by a code few will ever understand, because few will ever have the strength to live it. So let them talk. Let the noise rise. Let the world keep spinning. And you? You walk forward, calm, focused, untouchable. Not because you have something to prove, but because you finally know. You don't have to raise your voice when you've already raised your standard. Let silence be your signature. Let action be your answer. Let success be the only sound they hear from you.